In this video, let's dive into the story of Lotso from Toy Story 3 and take a closer look at his backstory and personality. His story starts out pretty sweet. During Christmas, a little girl named Daisy received him as a gift. He quickly became her favorite toy, and his life was as good as it could get. He was her constant companion, always by her side, soaking up all the love and attention she gave him. Lotso felt on top of the world, and he wasn't alone. He had two other friends who were also part of Daisy's toy collection: Big Baby, a giant baby doll, and Chuckles, a clown. Even though Lotso was Daisy's favorite, he was really close to Big Baby and Chuckles too. They were all a team, and Lotso thought that nothing could ever break their bond. But then, one fateful day, everything changed. Daisy and her family went on a trip, and they took Lotso, Big Baby, and Chuckles along. Daisy played with them a lot during the trip, and it seemed like everything was fine. But after some fun playtime, Daisy fell asleep during a rest stop, and when her parents packed up the car to leave, they accidentally left behind the three toys. Lotso, Big Baby, and Chuckles waited, hoping that Daisy and her family would come back for them. But they never did. At first, Lotso couldn't believe what had happened. He refused to accept that Daisy had abandoned them, and he was determined to get back to her. He convinced Big Baby and Chuckles to join him on a long journey to find their way back to Daisy. They traveled far and wide, desperate to reunite with their owner. But when they finally made it back to her home, Lotso was hit with a painful reality. He saw Daisy, but she wasn't playing with him or the old toys anymore. Instead, she was cuddling a brand new Lotso hugging bear, one that looked exactly like him. It was in that moment that everything changed for Lotso. He felt betrayed and heartbroken. He convinced Big Baby and Chuckles that Daisy had abandoned them all for the new toy. From that point on, his worldview shifted, and he turned bitter and angry.
She replaced us. Come on.
No, she only replaced you.
She replaced all of us, didn't she?
After the three of them hitched a ride on the back of a Pizza Planet delivery truck, they eventually ended up at Sunnyside daycare. It was there that Lotso saw an opportunity to create a place where toys could live without the fear of being discarded or forgotten. He thought it could be a fresh start, a place where no toy would ever feel unwanted again. But as we saw in the movie, things didn't exactly turn out the way he had imagined. Instead of building a paradise for toys, Lotso turned Sunnyside into a kind of prison. He climbed to the top, using his charm and manipulation, but the reality was far from the ideal place he had promised. Sunnyside wasn't a haven. It was a controlled environment where toys had no real freedom. Everything there felt more like a prison than a place to relax and be loved. Lotso had the power, but his rule was harsh and oppressive. One of his biggest weapons was his ability to put on a friendly face. When Woody and his friends first arrived at Sunnyside, Lotso greeted them with open arms. He promised them a life where they'd always be played with, never left alone, and never feel like they were discarded.
Mr. Lotso, do toys here get played with every day?
All day long, 5 days a week.
But what happens when the kids grow up?
Well, now I'll tell you. When the kids get old, new ones come in. When they get old, new ones replace them. You'll never be outgrown or neglected, never abandoned or forgotten. No owners means no heartbreak.
To Woody and the others, he seemed like a kind and welcoming leader, someone who genuinely cared for the toys. But beneath that charming exterior, Lotso was anything but kind. He was a ruthless dictator. He controlled the daycare by making sure that new toys who arrived at Sunnyside would suffer. He intentionally placed them in the worst room, the caterpillar room, where the kids were toddlers, too young to know how to properly play with toys. These kids were rough, and their playtime was chaotic and damaging. Lotso took pleasure in watching the toys get destroyed or damaged, all the while enjoying the comfort and safety of the butterfly room, where the older kids were more careful with their toys. He and his allies enjoyed a much more peaceful existence compared to the poor toys who were stuck in the caterpillar room, being mishandled and neglected. In this twisted way, Lotso's rule at Sunnyside wasn't about creating a place of comfort for all toys, it was about keeping control and enjoying power. He had everything set up to benefit himself and his closest allies, while other toys suffered. The facade of kindness was just that, a facade, hiding his true nature as a cruel leader who enjoyed the suffering of others. Anyone who dared to go against him or challenge his authority would face serious consequences. We saw just how far he'd go when Buzz resisted his commands. Lotso didn't hesitate to switch Buzz into demo mode, effectively brainwashing him into becoming his loyal enforcer. This moment highlighted the depths of his cunning and manipulation. He was willing to control anyone, turning them into puppets for his own gain. To Lotso, toys weren't anything special. They were just disposable objects. He believed that every toy was destined to be abandoned and forgotten, reflecting his own pain and bitterness.
We're all just trash, waiting to be thrown away. That's all a toy is.
He projected his personal experiences onto the rest of the world, convincing himself that the love between a toy and its owner was a lie. His painful memories of being left behind by Daisy led him to push this belief onto others. He tried to convince the toys at Sunnyside that their bond with their owners was fake, just because of his own traumatic experiences. This twisted worldview made him cruel and manipulative, leading him to treat other toys with disdain and disregard. Eventually, Lotso's reign at Sunnyside came to an end. Woody and the other toys exposed his true nature, and his carefully constructed empire started to crumble. But even when things were at their lowest, he had a chance to redeem himself. During the tense moment when all the toys were struggling to avoid falling into the incinerator, Lotso could have saved them by pressing a button to stop the conveyor belt leading to their doom. But instead of showing any mercy, he chose to leave them to die, refusing to press the button. This moment cemented his role as one of Pixar's most cold-hearted villains, showing just how far he was willing to go to maintain his cruel control. In the end, Lotso's story came full circle with a dose of poetic justice. After he abandoned the toys to die in the incinerator, he managed to escape, leaving Woody and the others to fend for themselves. However, the toys survived the ordeal and had a chance to confront him one last time. Instead of seeking revenge or holding a grudge, they chose to leave him behind, alone to face the consequences of his actions. The final time we see Lotso in the movie, he's strapped to the front of a garbage truck, left to endure the very fate he tried to impose on others, rejected, abandoned, and discarded, just like the toys he had mistreated. It was a fitting end for a villain who had no regard for anyone but himself.